All right. I know we had a few dozen people show up, and I'm sure they'll show up when they can, but I want to honor the time and stay consistent. Um, my name is Derek Distenfield, and I'm the co-founder of GSD Venture Studios. And today we're talking about VR and remote work. At GSD Venture Studios, we believe in finding exponential technologies and also overlaps. And as the world has changed, certainly we're combining an exponential technology where we're going to see exponential growth with an ever-changing world in the workplace. And we have two amazing people here to talk to Gary, my co-founder. One is Puneet Badranith. I butchered that, but one thing that I won't butcher is that Puneet is a phenomenal entrepreneur. He's a GSD Labs portfolio company, a product and evangelist, and most product evangelist, and most importantly, the founder of Fabric, a smart assistant for core engineering sectors, closing the gap between human and machines. He has a huge background with both startups and big companies, and most relevantly, a phenomenal product that simplifies VR and bringing it to the ever-changing work environment. Also here, we have Bhavish Sood, who's general partner at Modular Capital, a service that changes the way people invest. Modular Capital brings systemic investing to a variety of investment pockets while aligning manager investor incentives. They offer investment opportunities in both public and unlisted venture capitals. And I know I was talking about Bhavish, they've made investments not just in VR, but in AI and ed tech and other exponential technologies. My partner really needs no introduction. If you Google Gary Fowler and AI, you'll see a million web hits and a bunch of intelligent articles that I am not smart enough to expand upon. So the guy that really needs no introduction is Gary, who's going to take it from here and lead this panel. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here, and it's great to see all the incredible panelists. My name's Gary Fowler. As Derek said, I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I've done 17 companies and been all in tech for over 35 years. Love artificial intelligence and quantum computing. I've been involved in 2 unicorns. I was on the original management team at Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. And as we all know, intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world. And also, we've had some incredible, interesting opportunities over the last 2 years. 3 years ago, it was said that 93% of the companies worldwide would go through the digital transformation over the next 10 years. Well, that had to change. And so, as McKinsey said directly, we've had to really been forced to go down through and digitally transform. And here we are. I remember 6 years ago when I was one of the early Zoom users, and people said, why would you use Zoom? I have Skype. Because now we are digitally connected. And the companies that use the technology more efficiently and more effectively are going to really rule. So with that, I'd like to go down through and ask some questions of my panelists. So let's talk about it. So today, this is upon us, cross borders, HR is everywhere. How is AR and VR used in training, and what kind of an impact, Puneet, does that really have on the workplace and the way that we collaborate?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Derek, and thank you for having me, Gary. So when you think of work today, especially beyond because of the pandemic, people are stuck at homes, but business has to continue. Work has to go on as before. Business as usual has to happen. And that's where immersive technologies are making waves. So prior to the pandemic, you people were looking at AR and VR as something that's nice to have, something that we internally call a vitamin and not a painkiller. But when people were grounded at homes, everyone has to work remotely from tomorrow, set up the infrastructure. Training was the first thing that took a hit, and people said, "Hey, we have immersive tech. Why not start using it in a fashion that makes sense, especially for workers who are stuck at home and not able to access the right training infrastructure, not able to access the right the machines, especially in areas where people work with machines day in day out." So this is an area where that's one of the areas that's driving adoption of AR and VR as well. So yeah, so as we move fast forward 1.5 years after the pandemic, business is as usual. Businesses have woken up for immersive tech, and they're willing to implement digital technologies so that they stay ahead of the competitors, and they are embracing tech as it stands today.
Yeah, so in one of the areas that we need to take a look at as we're doing this, and again, this is going to have ramifications across the workplace. And if we look at areas like hyper-personalized training. So now we can imagine a world reinvented where we have direct training that's really conditioned and focused on that individual. And Bhavish, in terms of your perspective, how far down is this hyper-personalization in AR and VR connected, and how important is it?
I think it's going to be dependent largely on the volume of data which is available, because personalization would require very deep AI capabilities. So I think the computing resources on the AR VR side have improved. We don't have the lags anymore. The equipment is getting better. It's not bulkier anymore. So obviously, at the intersection of AR VR with AI, that's where the hyper personalization will happen. But I think it's still not going to stop. If you look at, you're doing remote working. Let's say you're trying to repair a solar, a solar farm, or you're trying to, you have a windmill, in the ocean. Obviously, you will not have the connectivity. So I think there is going to be a lot of hybrids which are going to be available, where people will talk about caching, the environments and those kind of things. So I think it's important, but I think it's not something which is going to be mainstream for another 2-3 years, because it's going to be dependent on how fast edge computing, the GPUs become faster. So it's dependent on a combination of, I said 3 things, the compute power and the volume of data available for, AI to actually work, because, AI is data hungry, as you know.
So Bhavish, now I want to paint a world. Actually, my next article in Forbes is about the metaverse, right? And work in the metaverse. So as an appropriate topic for today, now think about this. When do you think we're going to really get into this entire AR, VR, this alternative reality, and we're going to actually be doing that work in the metaverse? What do you think? And then second part of my question, when do we get to a point where it's not about the managers, it's about unsupervised AI really guiding the process?
Yeah, unsupervised learning, yes, interesting topic. So I think the metaverse, I think the good part is that we have 2 behemoths who have taken the kind of lead on that, right? Which is Facebook and Microsoft, especially on the Azure side. And Satya, in his last keynote, I think at the Build conference, talked about it, where he actually popularized it. So I think the thing to watch out for is this a new hash of the AR VR world, which has, in my observation, you look at the Gartner hype cycle, or you look at the investments, it kind of peaked out maybe in 2014 and 15. If you talk to a venture capitalist today and you say, hey, is AR on your roadmap? The answer is going to be no. So I think it's going to be interesting. What is metaverse doing fundamentally different, which, the AR, VR worlds, and, we've seen applications like Second Life and all, which, were the, so-called predecessors to the, the metaverse. But I think the difference this side is that you have 2 very big giants who are backing it up. And I think that is what is going to drive it. And, we saw the announcement today by Facebook. There was an article which said in Business Insider, they said 10,000 people are going to be working on the metaverse side in Europe for Facebook. I think, once that happens, the venture capital money will come. Why? Because simple, these internet giants are not going to be able to build everything on their own. They are going to come to companies like Fabric or some of the other ones to fill in the white spaces. So I think if you ask me personally, I think there will be a lot of active hiring in the AR VR space because that's the underlying technology for the metaverse. So expect that, and I think and I think
No, go ahead.
another use case which I keep talking about is Fabric does some of that part, so it's not exactly kosher for me to talk about my portfolio company, but there is a lot of visualization replacement which AR VR will come in the metaverse world. So I think that fact that you will not need a screen should be an interesting to visualize or render. So I think those are interesting applications in the initial stages. But even on the ability to very small use cases on the digital work instructions, the predecessor to digital twin. So I think there are going to be a lot of applications around this whole the metaverse angle. So I think it's been interesting to watch out. But I honestly need to see some solid use cases. It's in the what I would call storytelling arena from an readiness perspective. But yes, like all emerging technologies, it's going to become mature in like 6 to 8 months or 10 months. And then a lot of people who didn't work on it will actually get left behind.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing it right now. People are talking about it. And at the same time, there's an interesting question. And in fact, with my article, I started to think about what's real. Will the virtual work now become the real work when we start to work in this metaverse world? And imagine the efficiencies. And then when we talked about areas like unsupervised artificial intelligence, who becomes the manager? So the questions start to pop up, and who's better? So it's going to be an interesting shift. And are those one of my partner, David, has created this product called Morpheus. And Morpheus is a compassionate artificial intelligence that controls his house and has a dog and a robotic dog and a robotic cat. And so, what's real? And it's an interesting, when we start to cross the chasm and go to this new world, who's really the boss, and, what part of us are really needed or not. So it's interesting. Let's talk about human resources and direct. Let's talk about real applications that can be done now. So we look at areas like interviews, right? Interviews that we have. How does AR and VR really enhance the interview process, or does it really detract from the interview process? Puneet?
It's an interesting question. So whenever hiring happens, you need to have an in-person conversation to gauge the other person, understand the body language. That is something that is not being translated into the AR or the VR realm as effectively as one would like. But that said, a lot of precursors to the in-person meeting, as well as the lot of activities that happen after the in-person meeting, most of that can be migrated to AR or VR, and some of it has been. So one of the things that Bhavish mentioned was digital work instructions, for example. So you met this technician, you've hired him, you onboarded him, and you're expecting him to fix solar panels in the middle of the desert every day, right? He has to be trained. Now, think of, you can reimagine training at this point, right? So training traditionally has been in the classroom, but now you do just-in-time training. So when he's in the field looking at the panel, you provide him the right set of instructions. And that becomes an on-the-job, just-in-time training sort. So a lot of activities like onboarding, virtual interaction with multiple teams across the world, all of that is happening with AR and VR. The in-person conversation still needs to be in person. Even Zoom is limited. That there's some things that you would need to do face to face, hoping that that gets translated into virtual reality sooner rather than later.
No, I agree. What do you think? I mean, imagine the possibilities. You know, if you have your avatar, and we're both in this AR and VR world, and the AI starts to pick up the body language. You know, so your avatar is moving around, and it starts to give you cues, right? And starts to do ratings and things like that. So what happens? It's like, imagine this world where, you know, decisions are being made through the interview process. It starts to do, you know, sentiment analysis on your language. It starts to understand, you know, what your educational level truly is. You know, did you really go to IIT or not? And it starts to come back with recommendations and questions, right? What kind of questions should you be asking this person? Do you think that's a realistic world, or is that out there? Is that too far-fetched?
Oh no,
Bobby?
definitely not. I think. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Bobby. So what do you think? So Pete, go ahead, finish it. What? So you said definitely. What do you think? Is it real?
Oh,
gonna happen?
Yeah, I recently read this book called I think Data Statistics, or 10 Ways to Decode Data, and there the guy talks about statistics and how it was used for hiring, and how human biases have been introduced into the algorithm that does a lot of data-driven shortlisting, for lack of a better word, right? So that's already there. It is, so you have your algorithms that is being driven by data, and the translation is the only thing that's pending. So because we have enough, we put our entire life online, right? So we have the Googles and the Facebooks continually tracking what we do. The data exists. It is a matter of someone who builds the algorithm and maps it to an avatar. So that's where it is. You know, I think it's a matter of time, and we need to see how far we go into that rabbit hole.
Yeah, you know, it's fascinating, isn't it? You know, so you could get to a point where the AI could start to, you know, as you're going down through this process, start to make decisions for you, right? So it's going to start to say, should you do it or not? Does this jive with the Myers-Briggs or not? You know, sort of come up. It's fascinating. So let's take it down. So we talked about, Vavish, you want to talk about you know, we talked about training, but what about areas like video conferencing? You know, when are we going to get to a point where this is entirely accepted? And I don't know if you're like me, but I know when I put on the goggles, I get a little seasick after a while, because you know.
I also have that anxiety. The device, I call it the device anxiety. Yeah, I think those devices, I think they have a long way to go, and I think I'm personally a big fan of the web AR. You know, the AR kit, those kind of libraries, the kind of work, because you know, you have to have a mainstream adoption. The VR set is still a niche device. So, you know, I think for the AR VR to be, you know, for AR especially, to be mainstream, I think the experiences have to be mobile. Big believer in that. And now coming back to your specific question on video conferencing, I think the problem is going to be, yeah, I think people already have avatars, you know, available, you know, on video conferencing, but you know, I think in a metaverse world, you will actually meet people, you know, in the metaverse world. The thing to watch out is that most of the vendors are going to build what I call a walled garden in the metaverse world, right? So akin to saying AOL was the internet, right? I mean, it was a service to connect, but I think there has to be like a W3C equivalent of the metaverse. You know, there's a standards body, and there is a, you know, it is done as an open standard where everybody can get to participate. Otherwise, you know, the social networking giants, the cloud computing giants, they will all build their versions of the metaverse, you know, where people will come and, you know, collaborate, whether it's or do video conferencing or do remote work, whatever that might be.
Yeah, so you make the right point, but this happens with technology all the time, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah.
it first comes out, there's remember Ask Jeeves, Yahoo. There were
Yeah.
so many search engines out there, and all of a sudden the market started to consolidate. So you're right about it. One, is there going to be a standard, and how do we all participate in the world instead of one world? There'll be separate planets, right? And everybody will
Yeah,
be on on
I
their
think, and I
planet.
think there's nothing wrong. I'm not criticizing the approach of Facebook or Azure. I think that's how they are incentivized to build these R&D capabilities based on their business model. So, and I think you're absolutely right. They will pioneer it. They will take it to a certain stage, and then it will come mainstream. The idea of Facebook is to make sure that when people talk about a metaverse and where it is going to be hosted, it is inside the the Facebook community, because that's where you will come and interact with your people. So it will be interesting to see how the social giant, especially Facebook, because Mark Zuckerberg has clearly said Facebook is going to be a metaverse company, and I don't blame him. You look at the number of teens who are exiting out of Facebook. It doesn't have the kind of cachet it used to have.
No, I agree. I had the pleasure of having a lunch with one of the Facebook product managers last weekend, and it's interesting. But you bring up a really cool point. So there are going to be different worlds out there. We do need to come up with some standards to bring them together. This is exciting time. When if you look at it, one is our business world from AR VR. If Facebook's getting involved in it, one is the business world and our personal world going to come together. I mean, you're talking about bringing all these different elements at one time, and it's going to happen, right? Because data is around us. They say that today there are 49 zettabytes of data on the planet. If you took CDs or DVDs and stacked them one on top of another, it would go 35 times between the Earth and the Moon. And it's growing at about 68% per year. So we're inundated. And do you think in this AR VR world that, I've written a lot about these not smart but intelligent assistants that really help us to be able to make decisions, that the AR and VR becomes really part of our enhanced reality, to be able to our enhanced business reality. So if I've got a sales call, it's now going down through, as we talked about, the interview process, and help us to be more efficient in terms of our sales and to be able to bring up the data, kind of like Jarvis, right? This is but in a sense like that, is that realistic? Bhavesh, what do you think in terms of that world? Is that something that's going to happen? Are we going to bring this together?
So I think the conversational AI pieces are improving, and Amazon really pioneered it with their open ontology model, and now with GTP3 you could train a bot or but I think what Amazon has done with Lex is very interesting, and they'll continue to get better and better, especially if you see from the first versions. I don't know whether you've ever played with the voice recognitions of the first one. So I think, yes, again, I keep coming back to the point. The problem is not the technology. The problem is, one, the computing power which is needed. Second, AI is data hungry. How much data can you really feed it? So reality, yes, absolutely possible. And I think in the metaverse world, combining conversational AI with what I call a metaphysical model, I think those are very interesting things to look out for. But again, two very distinct streams of technology, both in very different stages of maturity. I think conversational is slightly more advanced and more sophisticated today. Even if you're doing intent-based training, which is based on the corporate data, or you have an open AI kind of a model with Amazon Lex, where you're actually just looking at any data which is being fed, whether it's voice or text. So I think that is far more mature compared to the AR VR side. And I think AR VR has predominantly suffered for the simple reason that it never actually went mainstream in terms of the use cases. So there was a spurt of activity.
We've had challenge, Bhavesh. I mean, look at Google Glass, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got, on one side of it, this was pretty interesting technology, but people didn't like it because you could go into a bar and you could start to, take pictures of people and videos and folks would know. And in fact, Facebook's new glasses have a little light that comes on so that people know that they're being recorded. I mean, it's kind of,
Yes,
there's
the privacy
ethics around,
implications.
there's ethics around it. And so, we need to come up with some rules of engagement of what's right and what's wrong. And the other thing is, how do we coax people to come into this world? Because some people may just simply not want to do it, right? This is
Yeah, so I think in a metaverse world, the classes of experience will vary, whether you are going there physically or you have a speech recognition impersonate you, or you even have a deep fake out there. So I think those are very interesting possibilities.
Hey, Bhavish, you're smiling because it's really interesting. You could have a deep fake avatar, right, or deep fake person that you could interview, and it wouldn't even be real, and you would have zero clue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It probably doesn't even need to record. Doesn't even need to. I don't even need to record a specific speech. The conversational AI engine is kind of taking over. So yeah, it might sound utopian, but it's also pretty scary. How it could potentially be misused.
Well, now, that's another point of when did this world become, the Germans have a phrase, Gestalt, the sum of the parts equal the whole. But we're really talking about a really, one universe opportunity where everything's blended together. And we're not going to know what's real and not, right? It's going to get to that point where we're not sure what is really real. And that opens up some interesting questions. But let's get
I think in a metaverse world, it will actually become even harder to distinguish between physical and virtual.
And when do you think, if we look at it, Puneet, when do you think in this metaverse world, we're going to get to the point where it's so blended that we can't tell what's real and what's not?
Oh, wow, that's a tough question. So,
you know what I'm saying? Because it's happening now, right? You see these deep fakes. I had Morpheus start writing me songs. So Morpheus is this unsupervised AI that my billionaire partner developed, and it's sending me songs. Like it's writing me classical music, like seriously writing original classical music. So how does it get to the point where it's so blended? And how do companies really, that's another way, that's another issue with security, right? So what's fake and what's not. So it opens up a whole, can of worms. But what do you think?
It is a definite can of worms. So I was just thinking when Bhavish was talking about how we're transitioning into the metaverse, right? And voice conversation at that point in time. So essentially, over the last, I see one generation of people around me who's older to me. They're comfortable with pen and paper. Well, I'm comfortable with the keyboard. My kids are comfortable just giving a voice. They don't even want to type. Right, so the generation, the Gen Zs are already comfortable being in the metaverse, calling that the real world, right? So they spend so much time in the metaverse, either in Second Life, in a game, whatever, plugged in. A majority of their waking hours is already there, right? So it's not too far, honestly. It is just a matter of getting a lot of these technologies mainstream, like virtual reality, for example. The hardware becomes simple enough and gets the number of people needed for it to take off, right? Once you get there, you have the applications, you have the capital, you have the startups who will take it the rest of the way, where it does become blended, and you get enough data to feed the data hungry AI algorithms to build better, do better. And you'll have deep fakes, you'll have all of these pieces will come into play. And at that point, it is definitely an ethical issue. And yeah, we have a lot of stuff to deal with over the next 5 to 10 years to sort these things out.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting world, because you're right. We're not going to be able to figure out what is real and what's not. Here's another question. What do you think about this, Puneet? With all this data coming in, so you're in this AR, VR world, the company's collecting all the data that you, everything that you do, right? What ethical, stopgaps do we have out there? Because you're going to have everything out there. They can analyze every single thing that you do all the time, all your voice communication. So what, I mean, I don't hear much about it, you know, and I've written a couple of articles about ethics and AI, but I mean, it's another world when you start everything that you can listen to and make determinations for hiring, for firing, right? For
Yeah.
performance reviews. What do you think? I mean, do we have that framework in place to be able to really monitor, and is it needed?
The framework is definitely needed. I don't think we have any framework right now. It's pretty patchy, right? So the only way you can have your privacy is if you log off the internet. The moment you're online, you have a Gmail, all of your data is captured. Whatever you search, whatever you type on the search bar is captured. Whatever post that you have as draft is captured. Everything is captured. So the data cloud of each and individual person is getting bigger by the second, and there is no framework because all of these data points are, like you mentioned, are in walled gardens. It is owned by big corporations, enterprises. It is not shared, and there is no oversight. There's absolutely no oversight into what's possible or what is being done behind those walls. Of course, we just assume that most enterprises are ethical in nature, and their intent is not to misuse. But leaks do happen, and whenever there's a data leak, your life history is out there for anyone to capture. So there is a need for that framework. It's difficult to say on what that framework would look like or how it should be. One of the things that I could think of, and this is something that I'm trying to draw a parallel when it comes to our medical records, for example. Even today, the medical records are in silos, but there is some intent where people are trying to give the control of their medical records to the patient. So you quite literally have a USB stick, and the USB stick has your history, or you have an account where your entire medical history is there, and you get to choose what you share. Right. I think there's some parallel with GDPR, but the control is with the individual. So that is a good baseline to start with, but there is a much bigger framework that the entire world has to converge and arrive at. Yeah.
You're right. So we talk about data security and privacy, but virtually everybody's using Gmail, right?
Yeah.
And then when you go into a new site, you say, do you want to log in with Facebook or Google? And
Right.
people are saying, but I'm concerned. I don't want people knowing about me, but they're not willing to pay for Gmail. Hello,
Right.
Gmail's not free, right?
Right.
And so Facebook, the same thing. It's kind of
Right.
interesting. We upload all our pictures. We put it on LinkedIn. We let the world see who we are, and we're concerned about security and privacy. So I think, and you make an interesting point. Do you think, and Bhavesh, from your standpoint, what do you think about the data? Who owns the data, and should we tokenize it so that we understand, because it's a value of who you are, right? And do we tokenize it, and do we come up with a different kind of model? And the second part of it, are people going to be willing to be able to accept it because they're used to having, companies are used to having Gmail, for free? Are we going to be willing to pay for it?
Yeah, so I think the tokenization is an interesting concept, and people are, I think eventually the whole metaverse thing is going to be a combination of AI, blockchain, maybe even NFT, and the AR VR side of the world. I mean, that's, metaverse is going to be a combination of these three technologies, emerging tech, not just one. Because it's going to be a virtual reality. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the moment it also depends where you're coming from, into the world. If you're going to start with the social networks and you're going to be in the social networks walled garden, like what Facebook is trying to, I mean, you absolutely have no control over data, because basically the moment you signed up to be in that world, your data was the product, right?
Well, I mean, you sign up because you want it for free, right? You go in because you want to connect to your friends for free. And then at the same time, there's really a blended world out there, Bhavesh, right? I mean, because, you know, you go on, you interview for a job, what happens? They go through your social media profiles, they look at who you are, the kind of things you do. You gotta watch pictures you put up. You don't want to put, you know, your college pictures when you're acting a little crazy up there, because somebody's going to find them. And now with some of these tools out there, it's all coming together. But it is a blended world. I mean, it's there's not, you know, we try to put these walls up, these lines of demarcation, but it's pretty impossible with all the stuff that's out there. And I heard yesterday about some tools that allow you to be able to find out the, you know, what the IP address is and the email of who signs up, right? So now,
Yeah.
you know, you can, oh, I'm going to go out to this site, and all of a sudden you start to get the advertisements.
Yeah, I think the applications of metaverse are, you know, are going to be interesting. It's not new. I mean, I look at, you know, Second Life as the predecessor. The question really is, what is so uniquely different this time? Apart from the technology, yes, there's tokenization happened because of, you know, blockchain/crypto available. You know, there's NFT. I understand that. I also understand that AR is now, you know, mobile first. I understand all of that. You know, there's, you know, AI available. You know, there's enough amount of data. But the question is, what are the real applications or use cases we are solving? You know, both in the B2B and the B2C side. I think that clarity is not there, like any other emerging tech, and I think it will evolve. For all practical purposes, you know, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, Second Life was a commercial failure. If you look at, you know, public available data, like on Wikipedia, it was like a 60 million, you know, kind of revenue they had, although, you know, the GDP values was considerably higher, the economic impact, for example. But the use cases are something interesting. But yes, in terms of the timing, maybe Second Life was not well timed as a technology or an online game, whatever you want to look at it. But this is, you know, the combination of these three technologies makes it, you know, meaningful.
Got it. So what do you think, you know, if we look at, Bhavesh, for the future, what do you think, you know, if we ranked ordered them in terms of, I know we've talked about the interviewing and training, but really what's there today? What are the top 3 trends where startups and investors who are listening to this seminar can go down through and say, these are some areas we need to focus in, because I can get, you know, this isn't about a world that's going to happen in 10 years. These are about opportunities we have today. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think there are, in my assessment, there may be like 4 of those. The first is what I call digital twins, which is a combination of 2 technologies, the augmentation of an asset, could be a machine or a part, and combining that with real-time IoT streams to do predictive maintenance, you know, what is traditionally called a digital twin, right, which is a part of process automation. That's a very interesting technology. Why? Because predictive maintenance or condition-based monitoring, you know, has existed for some time, but the augmentation with an asset with a real-time view, where there could be, you know, you, for example, you went to a power plant and you have a gas turbine there, which you're watching for, you know, you have a boiler where you're watching data on, you know, for example, temperature, you know, those kind of use cases were not solved. And, you know, these workforces retiring, you know, you look at power sector, people who've been working since their 50s or 60s are retiring. They're taking away a lot of the knowledge. Parts are being used for like 50, 60 years. So obviously, you know, you can't carry a 200-page manual. Even if you gave them a tablet, you gave them a ruggedized tablet, you know, they're going to search through hundreds of pages to try and identify, you know, the problem area. Those kind of things require new interactive technologies, which, you know, for that, I think immersive is the perfect. That is one. The second is this whole, see, COVID, let's face it, even if COVID in its current form stays for another 6 months, it's going to permanently alter people's behavior. And if you look at the camps, if I give you anecdotal feedback from my portfolio companies, some of them love bringing people back to the offices, but I think the fact of the matter is hybrid. In a hybrid environment, you know, AR, VR is going to be very crucial, especially when you are monitoring remote assets, you know, those kind of things, or, you know, just general collaboration. It's going to be pretty interesting. I think that's the second one. And the third, I would say, is, you know, just the augmentation of assets. You know, very low-end use cases. You have, You have IKEA where you can do, entire layout of your house. You don't have to measure anything. So
Yeah, no,
very
I
low
know.
end-
I've seen some of them, and I recently had a demonstration where actually you would go in and the system knows the kind of furniture you like and starts to put it inside the house.
Yeah.
So, or you
Yeah,
can say, I
and
like
it'll do it
modern,
far
and
more
I like
accurate.
light colors.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the house and the paint and, the inside starts to be laid out and it's to scale. And so you're right about it. But, and there's one more. I'm sorry to interrupt you. You said there was one other one, the fourth pillar.
Yeah. So I think third is what I call consumer AR, where,
Mhm.
I've seen companies who just, what are they doing? They're just doing augmentation of like small things like food menus.
Mhm.
Very small use case, but interesting use case. You can imagine, you peer through a restaurant menu. You don't, you have a word description of the, the dish you're going to order and a description of the ingredients maybe, but you just can't visualize it. And let's face it, the tablets are too tacky to be given to you. You don't want to see a video of that food being cooked. So, you give an AR of the food menu or the food item, so it increases the engagement or the chances of ordering.
Bhavesh, I'm not sure in some of the restaurants I've been to, but I want to see it being cooked.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I
I'm
need to
not
send you a
sure,
list of my favorite
I like
ones in
seeing
Palo
the,
Alto.
I like seeing the chicken after it's cooked and it's in my vindaloo.
Yeah, I know. You want to go walk into the freezer, but yeah. So I think the use cases vary. The point is I keep coming back to the point. The immersive tech is pretty hard, but it's hot in certain pockets from a venture space. And for the AR industry to survive, they need more application rather than horizontal use cases. So it has to be digital twins, it has to be process automation, it has to be digital work instruction, it has to be virtual walk-ins of furniture stores, retail experiences. The application of the AR technology, I think that those are the things. And true to the tech industry, they already have found a new buzzword. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of experiences get built out in metaverse, right?
No, I agree 100%. I mean, and, with my doctor, we have telemedicine sessions rather than going into the office. And it's going to be interesting when we come into this new world. And, with IoT and all these devices, with the new Apple Watch and electrocardiogram capabilities, where does it start to be so blind? I think it's great. And I like your example of process automation. Although I come back and, you're right, there's a lot of knowledge that somebody would have over 40 or 50 years or, 30 years working for a company. And you're talking about knowledge transfer because it's hard to do in a short period of time. It used to be you would have apprentices that would learn, but now because of the speed of change, it's not possible. So having that knowledge transferred over and using AR and VR and artificial intelligence, machine learning and deep learning to help us because it's all about the data one more time, right? I mean, think about in your worlds, the both of you, in your worlds today, you have about 300,000 items in your personal cloud. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. You, Puneet, and you, Bhavesh, have more information in your own personal cloud than the entire web. The challenge is that amount of information is doubling every year. In 5 years, you're going to have 10 million items. How in the world, in our own world, can we make sense of it? I believe we're in a state of infobesity. Now, how many times in the last 2 weeks has somebody said, Bhavesh, Puneet, I sent you a message. Did you get it? Where did you send it? And you're both smiling, right? Where did you send it? I sent it to your Gmail account. When did you send it? I sent it a week and a half ago. Will you resend it? I can't find it. That's incredible. So these tools that are out there, and that's another one of the use cases is really to visualize the data, right? And to help us make sense of these streams that are out there because it doesn't work today. We just have too much. So what we need to do is we need to look at how we can synthesize it, how we can understand it, and more importantly, how we can help it make sense for the company and for yourself. So going back to the process automation side, going back to use cases, we can see it across multiple. Doesn't really matter where you are in terms of an employee. It matters of what the application is. When do you think we're going to have better, Puneet, better, really vertically oriented technologies for AR and VR to be able to help in the workplace? So whether it's medicine and med tech, whether it is manufacturing or supply chain, when do you think do the companies exist today? I mean, you're working with a lot of those companies in India, but are they there with the technologies, and when is it going to become mainstream?
I think companies always land across a spectrum. You have guys who adopt technology the first day it comes out versus guys who adopt it after it's gone out of trends, and these guys are still trying to implement it. For example, the government versus someone in the Fortune 50 maybe. And so most companies lie in this spectrum, right? And these companies exist today. So the guys who will adopt immersive AR, VR, vertically integrated solutions exist today. Now the path to it is quite interesting. The path is you start small, pick up one application like work instructions, right? You solve it for one category of products where you're able to justify the ROI of the application. Once you're able to justify the ROI, you can go upstream and downstream, right? I can go downstream and say, hey, let's take an example, right? I have your transformer and I have the entire set of instructions of the transformer. Just give me the data from the actual transformer. I'll transform it, I'll change it into a digital twin. Now, suddenly from work instructions, which were passive or interactive, but passive, become active. Now I have data from the device and I have the instructions. Can I make it intelligent? Of course I can, right? I have the data, I can predict when it's going to fail, and then I know what you need to do because I have the instructions. And I know what person is at which level of skill set at that point because I've been seeing a person using the application. So now I can say this asset is going to fail in 5 days. That is the person you need. This is the set of tools, and this is the time it takes. You better start now. And the moment I integrate it with the ERP, the entire process becomes automated, right? So it's a step-by-step process.
Puneet, I gotta ask you a question though. Who's making that decision? Is it the unsupervised AR or a manager? You know what I mean? Because what you just described is it could be the AIs making the decision and we don't have to be involved, correct?
That's correct. I think it's going to be a combination. It's going to be a hybrid thing where you would have some bit of intelligence coming from algorithms, because algorithms would be very specific. It's not general AI, it's very specific, right? So you would get those decisions coming from the algorithm, and there's a person who would make that decision. I think we'll be in that world for at least the next decade or so. So we're good. Beyond that, we need to be really
we're gonna have self-driving cars, we're going to have planes that take us around. We're going to have all these different things. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing.
Yes.
We're going to be in the metaverse.
Second life. Yeah.
We're going to be sitting in our chairs. We're never have to go out of the house. We're going to have a Peloton there so we can get our exercise. We're in the metaverse, right?
You're describing Ready Player One at this point.
Exactly. But it's coming. It's not like it's just a thought. I see it every day. Right now, I'm in the heart of Silicon Valley, a few minutes from Stanford University. In India, when we talk to the companies throughout India, it's coming. It's a tidal wave coming in.
Yeah.
And what we got to do is figure out how we can use it for the good, how we can make our lives better, not worse, how we can share and how we can bring other people, because the democratization of opportunities for each, and what we talked about today, Puneet and Bhavish, is really the democratization of opportunities. And I'm for it. I just spoke at the United Nations about it. It really equalizes the playing field. And the one thing we found over the last 2 years with this pandemic is that, we need to have compassion and empathy for one another, and we need to help one another. It's not about who can come out on top. It's about how we can make this place a better place to live before we, totally destroy the planet. And having these technologies to understand the data in a workplace environment to make it more fair, to make it more just, to make it more right, to help us to learn better. We didn't talk about that today, but from my position, I'm a psychologist also. And as we go down through learning theories, to be able to have hyper-personalized learning, because you don't get it today. When you're in an environment, it's not hyper-personalized for you. You learn in a different way. Some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people memorize, but having those technologies in place that can help us to be better citizens, corporate citizens, and better at our jobs. So I see that it's an incredible opportunity for each and every startup out there. It's an incredible opportunity for the investors today, because you're right, it is truly a brave new world that we each have an opportunity to participate in. We need to use those. It's not just, you made a point, Bhavesh, about, these people that are retiring, et cetera. But I look at it as another opportunity, because you need those intergenerational teams. You need the people that have the gray hair in there, that have the experience and ideas, because you can use all the AI if you want. They're not going to have the training sets today that have the knowledge that they have, and more importantly, the contacts, right? So if as we're using AR and VR from remote workforce management, AR and VR in the workplace, we need to have these interesting models that are enhanced with some of the human touch, the human skill sets that are there. So it's fascinating. It's exciting. We're just the beginning of an incredible journey. I say it's like the beginning of the 20th century, and it's like the discovery of electricity. That's where we are today with machine learning and deep learning. That's where we are today with AR and VR. Look at the changes that took place over the next 30 years, from people moving from the farms in town, hospitals and devices, machines and motors, manufacturing. We are truly in the beginning of the fourth industrial revolution. We need to figure out how compassionately and empathetically to be able to bring everybody together. So we're coming up to the top of the hour. Puneet, I like your closing thoughts, and where's a place where people can get a hold of you?
People can reach out to me over email. That's the best way to reach. I'm generally available on LinkedIn as well. So LinkedIn and email would be the best way to reach out to me. My email is puneet@fabric.space, and you can find me on LinkedIn. You can type in Fabric and Puneet. I think I'll land up somewhere on the first page.
That sounds great. Bhavesh?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is perfect. Email also, but it's bhavesh@modularcapital.com. But LinkedIn is a great place to get in touch. I will, in most cases, I would respond in less than 24 hours.
What's interesting for you, Bhavesh? What are you interested in? So people reach out, your closing thoughts, and what are you interested in?
Yeah, I think, generally have a chat around emerging technologies, the things which fascinate me is not the technology part, but how the early adopters are actually utilizing what use cases, and, what are the chances of a technology becoming mainstream. I think those are the areas of interest.
That's great. So I'm going to wrap it up. I, appreciate both of you coming on board. Appreciate my audience today. My name's Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO and co-founder of GSD Get Shit Done Venture Studios. We're a premier AI and quantum venture studio. The world's upon us. Changes are rapidly happening. We need to make sure that we're, number one, healthy, number two, safe, and number three, compassionate, to be able to help each other. We've got a lot of challenges in front of us, but I firmly believe that we're resilient and we have the capabilities to overcome them, but we need to do that together. So again, my name is Gary Fowler. Reach out to me. You can get me on LinkedIn, Twitter, check out my shows. Love to have you. Send me an email, gary@gsdvs.com, and respond. Take care of yourself. Thanks to both of you. Thanks to the audience. Be happy, stay safe, and stay healthy, and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Good night, everyone.